Have you ever felt like instead of being in a family home you've created, it starts to feel a little bit more like a family trap? And there are many characters we play in life. Maybe it's the role of mama or a CEO or the entertainer. Sometimes we can get so lost in our roles and characters, we forget who we are in the process and feel trapped.
So here are 3 questions to ask to find your way out of that trap.
Mama says Namaste. Mama says Namaste.
Making a family can be easy and fun.
Oh yeah, but raising a family can be a whole different story.
From spouses to kids to the crazy daily grind, life often directs us away from connection and more into reactive chaos.
If you're tired of that cycle and are seeking something beyond the picket fence blues, this is the show for you.
I'm Ashley.
And I'm Nathan.
And we're here to take you from chaos to clarity by bringing awareness and intention into your home, not waiting for one day, and highlighting how
the uniqueness in each of us strengthens all of us.
Take a deep breath in and let's start a brand new day. With Mama Says Namaste.
This week, I posed the question in the Unschooling Families community and even on my own personal Facebook page and in the Eagles community, the 3 places where you do hear from Mama Says Namaste. I posted in there the question, what are you tolerating at home? And
did you tell them what you were tolerating at home?
I'm tolerating too much stuff in our house right now, and it's really driving me crazy. And so we will be talking about that.
And listen, ladies and gentlemen, I suggested that she get rid of some of her stuff. She got mad. No, it's not my stuff that's the problem. It's all y'all's stuff out there.
We had some finger pointing going on in here before we shot this episode, and we had to
It was fun.
Navigate through. And yes, this is a pet peeve of mine. Clutter drives me crazy. And I know one of the comments already on the question was somebody who was saying they're tolerating clutter. So we're going to get to those things that you're tolerating. And I want to leave that up for another week because I want to get more people to respond to those. So if you have not, first off, let me know. Reach out to us this week, and you can post it in the Unschooling Families group where I have that question. If you follow me on regular Facebook, I've posted the question on my personal feed. I've posted it in the Eagles community. If you are an Eagles 48 Days Eagles member, there's a lot of places where I've answered the question, or simply shoot us an email and let us know. Ashley@mamasaysnamaste.com. I want to hear from you on what you're tolerating at home that we may be able to incorporate into a later podcast episode. And just as we're doing this, I want to hear not just what you're tolerating, but maybe what you were tolerating in the past and you found a solution for. How have you gotten out of something? How have you found a rhythm and gotten excited? I would love to share some personal stories from some of you listeners on things that have gone right or things that you figured out that may be helpful for other families to move forward.
Yeah, I've learned just to not worry about it. And I've got these plugs I can stick in my ears where I can tune everything out.
There you go. It's a great way to handle life. Yeah, so before we really address the things that we're tolerating, we wanted to talk about the family trap and how you can actually kind of get trapped into it, where then all of a sudden you are realizing, wow, I'm tolerating a lot of stuff that I don't enjoy. And sometimes we feel trapped and we feel stuck in the character that we've created for ourselves, in the role that we play in our home, and we don't know how to get out.
Yeah, and it can happen really innocently. I mean, a lot of times, some of the best traps are very shiny and gleamy and hopeful.
Gleamy, I like that word.
Like that gleamy? Well, they're gleamy because they're like, come here, see me, gleamy. But, they're good intentions, I think. Like, I want to be a good banker, for example. When we first started, I wanted to be a good banker. And over time, you start to see that the requirements of being a good banker eroded into what I would consider at this stage in my life, if I was still doing that, that would erode into the qualities of what I would call being a good husband or father sometimes, because it can take up my time or pull me away. And so it can, you can kind of get into this situation where the role that you get into, that you see yourself in, that you create yourself in, it may not fit the way you are expecting it to.
It may take up so much space you lose other parts of who you are, like what you're talking about. Oftentimes we can do that in our work, where our character at work or our role at work becomes so time-consuming, all-encompassing. It becomes our identity so much. And sometimes there's merit in that.
Yeah.
And there are people where their life's purpose is in their work, and the messages they give are beautiful. And I'm so grateful for those people.
Mm-hmm.
I also feel that there are people out there whose life's purpose isn't in their work. Let me take that back. Their life's purpose does not translate into a paycheck.
There you go.
I am a huge advocate for parents that believe their life's purpose is in raising the next generation, pouring into the next generation. I believe in people who believe their life's purpose is in giving back and volunteering and doing different things to be an activist and reach out in other ways. There are lots of things beyond just your job or how you get your paycheck that can give you purpose. Your work can definitely give you purpose, and I do not advocate that you do work that you hate, because it will trickle into the rest of your life. But I also recognize that sometimes the work that we do, for example, I was a virtual assistant. That virtual assistant role did not, give me the fullest depth of purpose and fulfillment that I felt like that was everything I could do in life. But being a virtual assistant very much supported the ability for me to have a fuller cup financially so that I could give more, which I do feel is more a part of my purpose, is to bring light to others and to be able to do that sometimes without a price tag involved. So see, sometimes our work, while not being the main focus and essence of our purpose in life, can help to drive and fuel that. So as we look into, where we are in life. And I love that you brought up that analogy of the banker, because that was a season in your life, and that was an identity that you created. And then as we started to go into what does really being a banker look like? What does that pull out? Then we started to look and revitalize. So let's jump straight into the questions, because we can kind of bring this in as we share examples. We've got three questions.
More rabbit trails. More rabbit trails.
We're so good at rabbit trails. That's why we have to stay focused and plan on these podcasts before we get started. So we have three questions to ask yourself in order to avoid feeling trapped as a family. Number one, when we ask that question, what are you tolerating? We started getting responses back in. It's not having the community. It's not being heard in the home. It's dealing with clutter in the home. What are these other things that we have? So the first question is, when you feel like you are trapped in your home and you feel like things aren't going as planned, have you sat down and defined what would be right? What does look good? What success feels like, looks like in your home?
And often this is a step that we skip, because it's easy to, I call it the Eeyore syndrome, where it's kind of like, well, there's this, and then there's this, and I can't control this, and then there's this, so I'll just do this. Maybe it'll change one day.
Ho hum.
But, it's, if you don't know where you want to go, then you're going to stay in what you got.
Exactly.
And so that's kind of the paradigm shift here of kind of rebuilding, because I think the trap is really, to me, trap is an easy word, but it's really the end of a season. It's the end of a storm. It's you're coming to the end of a journey, and it's time to start another one.
Right. So is it your choice to stay in the trap, or to see this as a launch pad for a potential new season or new creation that should go forward?
I think often when we feel that kind of drag in our heart, that kind of weight that starts sitting in the bottom of our chest and reminds us that we could do a little bit more, we could be a little bit lighter. That's a sign that you're kind of heading home. You're circling back around to start keeping your eyes open for what might be available to you next. Because those next steps are that's the stuff that when you talk to people and they're like, I don't even know how I got here. It's just so amazing. My life is so good.
Well, so let's talk about this because the first question to ask yourself is, what have you defined? And when we talk about what have you defined, that is not saying that Nathan and I sit down and say, okay, what's the definition of a happy family? We wake up at 7 a.m. From 7 to 8, we read and we drink tea. Then from 8 to 9, we go for a family walk. At 9 o'clock, I jump into work and the children do schoolwork for 3.2 hours while Nathan fixes a beautiful, well-rounded lunch. We're not going into all of the details with that. Sounds beautiful,
sounds
though.
like our, yeah.
That actually is a pretty common one. But that's not what we talk about. What we talk about is what that family vision is. Before we go into being mad about what is in our home, we have to check ourselves and say, have we defined what these relationships should, could, feel, and look like? What we want? Have I, as a wife to Nathan, talked to Nathan about how I best feel supported, how I envision and dream of what our relationship could look like together? Have we defined what a happy, healthy marriage looks like? And have we actually sat down and done that? Because that can be very different. For one person, a happy, healthy marriage may be, duking it out and having what's known as a volatile relationship. Volatile relationships can still work. It's a very different type of relationship than somebody who is working toward an agreeable relationship, for example. Some people thrive on the discourse and they can make it work in a supportive way still. Other people are not going to want that. I mean, Nathan and I did not want that. We did not want volatility as a part of our definition of our marriage.
Well, we started it that way.
Oh, yeah. Because we were just stepping around the landmines that we didn't yet know about each other as we started to discover and identify it. And so we've gone back repeatedly to define, what do we want our family to really be about? What do we want the feelings to be like at home? And we've talked before about creating a family vision. We have a whole episode just on that. I've got videos on it. I've got a lot of content to talk about how to create a family vision at home. And that the reason for doing that is because that does become my definition of what we're craving and what we're trying to get back to at home.
Now, here's how you keep the blinders off, is you define what you want new as kind of feeling definitions. So I'd like to feel lighter. I would like to have blank time to myself. I would like to, what I mean by that is, if you start saying, well, I need you to wash and wax the car every Saturday or I'm not going to feel fulfilled. Well, that's not very fair. If you want to find success in enjoying where you're at, the less you specifically define, well, I need to have a Maserati that is 2017 or up, and if I don't have that, then I'm not happy. Well, that, what we're talking about is a vehicle to get you around. Yeah, so,
right.
So, if you get too specific,
look loose, look broad, and make sure that the feeling is the essence behind it, not so much the detail as to how it happens.
Because you might find multiple ways that don't even involve anybody else or anything else to bring those feelings about and refresh yourself.
So, for example, our family vision, and we've stuck with this family vision since,
Babies.
I guess, it's been about 8 years, 7 or 8 years since we've done our family vision. So, Jules was around 2 or 3, and we sat around and we did this family vision together, and it boiled down to 6 words: explore, connect, listen, respect, learn, and love. Now, those become the definition of what we want to have created into our home. So if I am saying, what am I tolerating? I'm tolerating a lot of back talk from my kids. It's driving me crazy. Well, if I go back to my family vision says respect is something that we all talked about in this family. I don't feel respected when I'm talked back to. So how can we have a conversation about this? Well, right now we've already said, we're already a step ahead, because we can say, well, it's already been defined in our home that respect is important and back talk doesn't fit in there. That's number 1. Number 2, the second question you ask yourself is, have you experienced what you want in the past? That doesn't mean the exact same situation. We're not just looking at trying to hold on to our past and relive our past, because the truth is you cannot relive your past. Because if you are reliving your past, you are experiencing it with the insights you know now, which is further along. You never relive your past. You can look for trying to go back to different feelings and emotions and actions and ways that you've done that. But it's going to be a new experience, always, because you're coming with a different mindset. And so when I say that, what I want you to do is dig back in your past into where you're feeling the opposite. So if you're feeling ignored in your family, go back to where is a feeling where you really felt valued and cherished by ones that you love. What did that look like? What was that experience? If you're feeling that, you are constantly a victim of circumstance and everything's coming bad your way, go to a point in your life. Did you ever have a time that you feel like things are flowing for you? The reason you're going back to these past things, again, is not to recreate it and to say it has to be that way, but it's to help you remember and recognize that, hey, it is possible with you. And maybe there was a different mindset you were in during that time that is that first step in awareness on how you can get back there again.
Yeah.
If you've already experienced some element of that, it's easier to then go back and try and see what you can do to bring that back in. And so it's a great exercise to just, okay, do you remember when we went on that date and we sat and we just shared about our dreams, and you took the time to write me a letter that kind of highlighted the things that you valued in me. I really felt supported and listened to when you did that. I didn't realize how much you're paying attention to my words. And when you echoed my words back to me, I felt more heard than I ever have before. Oh my gosh, well, if I can use that experience of that one thing, then when I go to my husband now and I say, God, I don't feel heard at all, I can go, man, do you remember when you did this? What were some things that were going well in our lives beyond this? How can we go back to recreate that? I want to get back to that point with you.
Yeah, what were we doing to make that happen? And that can start your heart to kind of daydream back into, okay, well, here, it was before kids. That's part of the dealio. It can't be, that's got to be dressed into it.
Well, and that's why you're looking for ideas for where your mindset was at versus the details around it.
Exactly.
Because we can always justify why it's not going to happen again because the details will be different.
So if it was before kids, maybe I was more rested. And
and then we can talk about, wait a second. So when you have the bandwidth and you're more rested, you're able to do that. Well, we've got young kids. We just don't have the time. You work a 40 to 60 to 80 hour work week and you're gone all the time and we've got toddlers at home. I mean, how are we going to add the rest in?
Then we need to have some very sacred space for you and I, darling.
We got to have some time to work it in. We're going to have to decide what's worth it. What are we sacrificing? I mean, we're always sacrificing something in exchange for something else. Are you sacrificing your health and well-being for the sake of a paycheck?
Yeah. And these are big questions that, they aren't answered overnight. These are things that you chew on and you try. Especially
if it's that one, sacrificing your health and well-being for the sake of a paycheck, because we recognize that when and we've got episodes on when you're in survival mode. I mean, that is not a point in survival mode to be then looking at, how we're going to Zen master out our family. Like, there's some times where we're just flat, we're not there yet.
Yeah,
we got to get ourselves out of survival mode and then be able to look at those next levels of enlightenment and comfort and peace in our homes.
Yeah.
So this is not that everybody is going to be at the point that you can do this, but we want to pull out when you feel trapped. There are ways to get out. There are options, and the first one is looking at, what have you defined in your home? Have you taken the time to actually communicate what healthy, what happy, what peaceful looks like in your home? Then looking at, have you experienced any elements of this in the past that you can draw from? I'll do this with the kids. Boy, I really capitalize anytime that, I have a kid that is super excited and joyful and proud of something they've done. Boy, I'm going to really shoot that home to them. Do you recognize how good this feels right now?
Mm-hmm.
Did you enjoy every part of the process? No. Was it hard work? Yes. Are you proud of yourself? Yes. remember this the next time you're at the bottom of the hill, not yet at the top.
Yeah.
What can we do? How can we make sure you recognize that this is worth it? This is worth the hard work for the feeling you get. Relationships, living under each other, like living in other people's living space and being all up on each other. I mean, my gosh, we are in a itty bitty little fifth wheel. And, and today, right before the podcast, was me getting frustrated at too much clutter in the fifth wheel.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, we have to
And
figure out how to.
laughing hysterically at you.
Which I don't react well to.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
But as you start revisiting those ideas of the past and who you were and kind of bringing into who you want to be, it's really important to, when we were early in our relationship, we would talk about some of the things that triggered us just so that our spouses would know, getting to that laughing point thing. Like sometimes if it's done in jovialness and you've built up enough deposits, that's fine. But there can be a cackle or a laugh that can be a strike to somebody's heart that you don't even know what you've done, and it sets the energy and everybody feels trapped and you kind of recluse.
I would say our conversation right before this podcast episode would have been one that would have ended in a fight with you and me, a negative fight.
Oh, yes.
If we had not had more deposits, because it was a tiny bit of frustration for me. And Nathan laughed about it because he recognizes the ridiculousness of both of us with holding on to things and not letting go of stuff and everything else. And I hate being laughed at. And that was a pet peeve of mine that was a trigger when I was a kid. I didn't like to be teased and made fun of or felt lesser than or belittled or anything like that.
Right.
And so for him to do that, I could instantly go back to that trigger and get mad. And that's a really quick way to take something that's super light and a slight chuckle because I shoved something in my closet and shut the door fast. And that slight chuckle then becomes the retaliation and I blow up and explode. And, it's not like you don't have anything going on and I'm going to make you feel how I felt.
You immediately ran over to my closet and
Opened
whipped the door
door.
up. Well, looky what we have here. And then at home, that one there. But see, that's the thing is that's the secret of the trap is you will drag yourself right back down where you are right now. And that's what I tell my kids.
And try to get the other person to feel what you're feeling.
Exactly.
So it's like the black crabs that continue to drag you back into the bucket and not let you go loose because especially if you don't receive it in the way I want you to receive it. Well, you laughed at me, so now I need to make sure you
really get it.
Feel it.
Yeah.
And you recognize where I'm at.
Well, and my attitude is
You see what he's doing here?
So, well, I guess I'll go to my kids. I'll just stay off my attitude. But what I tell my kids is, this taste in your mouth is going to stay the same unless you make a change.
Yeah.
The world is not going to change its flavor for you. It will not. You have got to change that for yourself. And so if you are in a position where, you continue to find yourself, and we were there early on, you were very combative and debatable. You debated everything. I was Mr. Smarty Pants and thought I knew everything. And so that was just a delicious recipe for any interaction between us.
Well, it was very time consuming and energy taking to just simply hear our conversations and how much time we would spend arguing back and forth to ultimately get to the same point. But because we came at it in different approaches and it rubbed each other the wrong way, it took us a long time to get there.
20 minutes to walk a step.
Yes.
But, but we started to recognize that in ourselves and realize that it was easier to either let go, and maybe it's not that big of a deal to us. Maybe I don't really care. Do I care? And what is my why? What is my goal behind this situation? And, once you start to unpack that in your mind, you start to kind of track down new paths in the grass that you can start running down. They're like, okay, it's okay. Like, I still feel negative feelings. And like when somebody does something to me, I go through the process of being mad and thinking about all the things that I would do back to them. But I hold myself back until I get to a place of calm and I decide how I really want to respond and what I really care about. Because in that first 20 seconds, man, I'm a fighter. But after that 20 seconds, I'm okay. And so you just kind of figure out your triggers and how you can work with each other and communicate, hey, if you know, when you do this, it makes me feel this way. Now, I know I'm in charge of my feelings and I'll work on that. But I just need you to know that, you know, every time you laugh, I feel belittled. So when you laugh, make it count. It better be worth it. I'm letting you know that that's a sensitivity for me, because you're exposing yourself when you say that. And that takes bravery in a relationship. But that's what a relationship is bravery.
Right. And that's the third question is, now, have you defined it? Can you pull from your past experiences to know what the feeling is like when you do feel fulfilled in some way in what it is that you're frustrated about? And then the third one is, have you allowed it? And that's a hard one to admit to. But me not ever having a conversation with Nathan about how I feel, like my mind takes me to way lesser than when I'm laughed at than what somebody may even think. You know, Nathan may have been laughing about just the silliness of the way things fell back over, and I have taken it as he's laughing at me as a person and he thinks I'm stupid. And so that's on me. If I don't say anything to him, I've allowed that behavior to perpetuate. And what happens is you don't say something, you don't say something, you don't say something, and all of a sudden this has become the identity, is that the husband speaks very condescendingly to the wife and jokingly says things like, well, you know, your place is in the kitchen. You just go get me a drink. That's what you're good for. And you say those little things just a few times, and the wife sits there and just tolerates it. God, okay, well, you know, I'll do it just this once. And do these things, and all of a sudden it becomes your identity and you're trapped into it. Well, you set the stage for how people are going to treat you. You have that opportunity to let people know how to get the best out of you. And the more you can share that, the better it is for everyone. I mean, that's a win-win for them, because they're getting the best out of you and they're not getting halfway. Because unfortunately, those people that tend to take it and take it and take it oftentimes have the ability to build up a lot of resentment from it. Ultimately, at some point, it's going to have something that will fire off and explode. And oftentimes, that personality of those that do take it, it's either going to result in, that big explosion, or complete shutdown and apathy. And you start to check out of different things. And so it is much better to share how you best respond to others, especially those under your household, than it is for them to then risk either your blow up or your apathy. And unfortunately, a lot of families get that. And they've got the parent that's given up, that's frustrated, that either is just reacting in frustration and anger, or just flat doesn't care and retreats. Because
when that happens, when you're on the receiving end of that, you know, usually your first response is like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I had no idea that I was... No, that's not how you respond. Like, well, you do this all the time.
Right, and I don't want any more confrontation, so I'm just not going to say anything.
Because usually the issue is splintered in with multiple. You know, it's not usually one thing. It is, well, there's a little bit of this and a little bit of that. It's the seasoning of frustration that swept together. You know, you don't know how big that pile is until you get it all together. And that's the dangerous thing of that situation, is if you're not expressing that, if you're just holding that in, well, you know, that's not really fair to anybody else either.
And let me explain something about a conversation that you can have, because I struggled with this. I mean, trying to explain what it is that I'm feeling is not it's not always easy for us to be able to identify. Sometimes it's just flat, it's rubbing me the wrong way and I don't know why. And I mean, we've had those conversations where I say, you know, I'm getting frustrated because I don't feel heard. And the first answer is, you know, well, what are the examples? I'm like, well, God, I've not kept a checklist of it. I don't have my like proof, my facts, my examples of everything, where it's, well, on October 13th at 3:47 p.m. you said this to me, and at this time this experience happened. Well, oftentimes I don't know. I'm feeling this, it's been rubbed the wrong way, and you're wanting me to give you the pile up for my case. And I'm like, well, I'm feeling this right now. I'm not going back in judgment for every single thing that's built up. I don't know how to get past it now because you're basically calling me out on I either have to prove that it's a constant big issue. How do I get out of this? It's flat that. It's us having a conversation just like that.
Yeah.
It was me saying to Nathan, I don't have my facts and figures, but my feeling is this right now, and I don't like it. What can we do about it?
So what does feeling heard look like?
Right. And for those of you who maybe do have all of those facts and figures and you dump it on the person and they're just on that feelings aspect of it, they're going to be like, what? Mm-hmm. Have you been enjoying our relationship, or are you just keeping a tally of every time I screw up? There's not one right way to do this. There's not one way to come to this conversation, and this is the way where you can have a conversation and it's going to work perfect. I can't give you that. We can't tell you that, because you're going to meet people where they are. And when you're talking to your partner, when you're talking to your children, you're meeting them where they are. And recognize timing is huge. And I mean, I know after 18 years with the love of my life, my absolute best friend and soulmate, that there are times that are poor timing to bring things up with you. You're not in the right frame of mind for it. And I know that if I want to talk about, brainstorming a new project, I'm not going to touch it at this point. Yeah. Because I respect that you're not there. So some of it is just flat out meeting each other where they are and recognizing we're not always going to be at our best. And for that reason, maybe we don't push all the time. And we learn the give and take and the flow of working with people. It's just being willing to have a conversation. It's being willing to say, hey, I care enough about this relationship to not blow up or check out of it. So can we talk so neither one of those do happen?
And that's, no. Who's going to say that?
Well, and then so where do we go from here?
All right, fine. Let's talk. Let's figure this thing out and see. And sometimes, it may be so volatile. There may be so many landmines in your life that you need to have talk with a mediator or a counselor where you start to unpack these things. Where somebody say, but Jim, listen to yourself, or Mary, is that really a fair request? Those sorts of things. Sometimes, and that usually occurs when we're really caught up in a me space of, okay, I need this to feel happy. I need this to feel fulfilled. And the funny thing about a lot of that is you don't need all that stuff, I don't think. I think it's letting go of a lot of that. Those ideas of what you think you need, and you kind of, at least for me, letting go of that and embracing what has been a very different experience than trying to demand how I want the world to love me. Mm-hmm. But because that's usually, nobody wants to, you don't always want to write your own love scene, Yeah. And so it's fun to allow some serendipity to come into your life and allow for that magic. But if you're really backed into a corner and neither one of you can really find a clear angle, having somebody to help walk you out of that is really important.
Yeah, and we aren't above that ourselves.
Yeah, we've done that.
We have done that, and we have gone to marriage counseling. We've sought coaches for different things in our lives. We look for support and help, and sometimes it's that third-party perspective. I need somebody who's outside of it, who's not biased and in the thick of it with us. So, yeah, that can be so valuable. So the more that you can be open to the conversation,
and be curious,
the further you can go. Oh, I know what I was going to say too, is that we watched a video right before this. Mark Delaney, he's in our 48 Days Eagles community, and he runs the Purpose Mastermind. He's got some great videos on just helping to get out of the ruts that we can get in and helping to figure out what our purpose is in life and our mission. And we watched one this morning. I watched it with the girls, and it was talking about identifying my purpose in life. And he talked about how when he was really trapped trying to figure out his purpose, his focus when he woke up in the morning is me. And you hear that a lot on this podcast. Look inward first. Focus on who you are and who you want to show up as. His focus was on me, on inward, and his problems and what he was struggling with and his lack of direction. And he'd created these walls around him to stay tunnel focused on that. And in doing so, he just kept bumping up against the edge of his wall, not growing. And when he started to take those walls down and interact with other people in that relationship, he started to see other things that they were offering. And as they're, speaking light to him, he sees, the things that light them up in them that inspired him. And it made him want to be a better person. And then he started to recognize as he was interacting with others, how not only was he inspired and growing in who he was recognizing what sweet spots and gifts he had in those interactions. And so instead of looking at him and his problems, he started to see others and recognize his own gifts in interaction. And it was a whole different way to come to identify purpose and meaning in life when he started to see his gifts in interaction for others as opposed to just the problems he's stuck in.
Yeah, a lot of times your purpose is out there with others in the dance.
Right. It's getting into relationship, and you got to break down those walls in order to get there.
So how do you break those walls down, Ashley?
Start
with these three
with those
steps.
3 questions. If you are tolerating anything in your life, especially when it comes to relationship with anyone else, number 1, have you talked with that person and defined what you both want it to look like? What your ultimate desire is? Have you experienced that feeling that you want in your past that you can pull from and get ideas for how you were and where your mindset was? And have you allowed it by not speaking up until this point? Can you take ownership in what part you have allowed by not setting boundaries or clearly communicating? Our challenge to you is to take these 3 questions and ask yourself and assess right now, because oftentimes those points of friction, those times where what you are tolerating is so big in your awareness that you're clenching your teeth out of frustration, those are the springboards for transition. Those are those opportunities where it has become so much in your awareness that you have the chance to change it. Are you going to change the course of where you are moving forward and redirect it? Don't set your plan for your life. Don't set your family mission for your life once and be done with it and assume that your life is just going to go completely perfectly charted. That's fine as long as there are no other people and no other natural circumstances in your life. Doesn't happen. We all have it. So we have to work with everybody and have grace for growth. Ask yourself, what have you defined? Have you experienced what you want in the past? And are you allowing this going forward? And create something beautiful with those you love, where you all can thrive in recognizing the gifts you bring to the table. And the uniqueness in each of us strengthens all of us.
Namaste.
1, 2, 3. Up with the rising sun, already on the run. Mama says namaste. Life is a tangled mess, and you don't have to stress. Mama says namaste. 'Cause today I will stand up and be all the change that I want to see in this world. Boys and girls, you gotta have to stand up to be free. Oh, namaste in your heart. Take a deep breath in and let's start a brand new day. With Mama Says Namaste.